I have been at work for some time, building an apparatus to see if it is possible for personalities which have left this earth to communicate with us. Not by any occult, mystifying, mysterious, or weird means, such as are employed by so-called mediums, but by scientific methods.
Thomas Edison, not the lone genius history books like to claim, but a ruthless businessman who built an empire on other men's patents. Still, even Edison couldn't escape the pull of the unknown. In 1920, he spoke of a new invention, what the press called a spirit phone, a device he believed might let the dead speak through machines. Since 1878, Edison had been a member of the Theosophical Society, a movement that mixed science with ancient mysticism. At its center was a woman unlike any the modern age had ever seen, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, a Russian mystic who claimed to channel hidden masters from beyond the Himalayas, a writer who sought to weave East and West into one great philosophy, a woman who divided the world, hailed as a prophet, condemned as a fraud, but never ignored.
Helena Blavatsky claimed to channel wisdom from beyond this world. The question is, who was she speaking to?
Helena Petrovna Blavatsky was born in 1831 in Yekaterinoslav, today's Dnipro, Ukraine. She came from nobility. Her father was Colonel Peter von Hahn, a Russian officer of German descent. The von Hahn line was part of the Baltic German nobility, with a long record of military service to the Russian Empire. And her mother, Helena Andreevna Fadeyeva, a novelist who died young. She was from the Dolgorukov family, one of the most ancient and prestigious noble houses in Russia, with roots going back to medieval princes. But young Helena was no ordinary child. From an early age, she claimed to see things others could not. Apparitions, forces moving in the shadows. She had an uncanny gift, what her family called second sight. Servants whispered that the girl was protected by unseen powers. By adolescence, her strange abilities only grew stronger. She seemed fearless, reckless even, often riding wild horses with no saddle, or slipping into trances where she spoke of visions no one could explain. The natural world, stones, rivers, and forests, felt alive to her. She believed they carried voices, messages from beyond. But these experiences were not dismissed as childish imagination. They were the first signs of a life that would be consumed by the occult. At 17, Helena entered into an arranged marriage with Nikifor Vladimirovich Blavatsky, the vice-governor of Yerevan in Armenia. He was nearly 40 years her senior. Within 3 months, she fled the Union, some say on horseback in the dead of night, escaping to her family and then out into the wider world. That flight set her on a different path, one of endless travel. From Constantinople to Egypt, from Europe to India, she wandered for decades, driven by visions and a hunger for hidden wisdom. It was the beginning of the quest that would ultimately shape her destiny. After her escape, Helena began to wander. From Yerevan, she moved south through Constantinople and into the wider world. What followed is one of the most important periods of her life, a span of decades where history and myth blur into one. Some say she joined a circus in Tiflis, mastering the art of trick riding, taming wild horses with a fearlessness that stunned crowds. Others insist she disguised herself as a man, crossing borders that would have been impossible for a woman of her station. There are tales of shipwreck in the Aegean, where she nearly drowned before washing ashore, and whispers of secret initiations in Egypt, rituals hidden behind temple walls, passed down by adepts guarding ancient knowledge. Whether these stories were literal truth or carefully woven myth, one thing is certain. She wandered farther than most women of her century could even imagine, driven by visions, haunted by unseen forces, and guided, she claimed, by the hand of a master. Helena said she met him first as a vision in childhood, a towering figure she called Moria. Now, during her travels, she claimed to meet him in the flesh, an adept from the East, one of the mysterious Mahatmas who would shape her mission. Blavatsky insisted she was never working alone. Behind her, she said, stood the Mahatmas, the masters of wisdom. For decades, she moved through Constantinople, Greece, Egypt, India, and back again. She claimed her travels were guided by the unseen hands of these masters, hidden adepts who guarded the oldest truths of humanity. The most important of them was Moria, a towering figure she first claimed to see in childhood visions and later in the flesh during her travels in India. Alongside him was Kuthumi, another Eastern adept whose teachings, she said, reached her through letters that appeared in impossible ways, sometimes materializing directly onto paper as if dropped from another world. To her critics, they were inventions. But to Helena Blavatsky, they were the very source of her mission, to deliver fragments of an ancient wisdom tradition that had survived the fall of Atlantis, Lemuria, and countless forgotten ages. In 1871, in Cairo, she made her first attempt to gather followers. She founded a spiritualist group she called the Société Spirit, but it collapsed within months, plagued by fraud, quarrels, and scandal. Still, the seeds were planted. Helena Blavatsky was beginning to test her power to draw others into her orbit. In 1873, Blavatsky arrived in New York, a city buzzing with seances and mediums claiming to speak with the dead. But she dismissed them as frauds, insisting they misunderstood the forces they were playing with. Here she met Colonel Henry Steele Olcott, a lawyer and journalist drawn to the paranormal. Together with William Quan Judge, they founded the Theosophical Society in 1875. Its aim was radical for its time, to unite science, philosophy, and religion, to promote the brotherhood of all humanity, and to explore the hidden laws of nature. In just 2 years, Blavatsky would publish her first great work, Isis Unveiled. It challenged the materialism of science, the dogma of religion, and introduced the West to the vast cosmologies of the East. It was the beginning of a movement that would ripple across the world. This was the turning point. The wandering mystic had become a leader, and the teachings of the Mahatmas were about to ripple into the modern world. Two massive volumes, nearly 1,300 pages. It was nothing less than a war cry against the world of her time. She attacked modern science for its arrogance, for reducing the universe to dead matter and blind chance. She attacked Christianity for twisting older truths into dogma. And she insisted that behind all religions, behind every mythology and philosophy, there existed a single current of ancient wisdom. A wisdom guarded by hidden initiates, stretching back to Egypt, India, and Atlantis. She pulled from Hermetic texts, the Kabbalah, Gnosticism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and more. The message was clear. All traditions were fragments of one great truth. She spoke of astral and psychic forces, unseen energies science had yet to measure. She spoke of reincarnation and karma, saying the soul passed through cycles far older than the church would allow. To spiritualists, she said their seances were real, but that they misunderstood the forces they played with. To scientists, she warned their discoveries were only the surface of deeper laws. She claimed she was not the author, but the channel. The Mahatmas, the hidden masters, were behind the work. Some said she wrote in trances, pages flowing as if dictated from beyond. Though their presence was not yet explicit, their fingerprints were all over the text. Isis Unveiled was presented as a master key, and the masters themselves were the silent architects of its knowledge. The first volume, Science, opens with an attack on modern materialism. She accused science of arrogance, of reducing reality to lifeless matter while ignoring psychic and astral forces. Here she introduced the idea of the inner man, a spiritual core beyond the physical body, and hinted at reincarnation and karma, ideas that would later become central to Theosophy. She argued that hidden laws of nature were already known to the ancients. The phenomena studied in seances, she claimed, were real, but the mediums misunderstood the forces they were tapping into. To her, these were the echoes of a far older science, the wisdom religion. The second volume, Theology, turned her focus to religion. Blavatsky dissected Christianity, accusing the church of corruption and sorcery, and insisted that its doctrines were only fragments of something older. She compared the faith to Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and the mysteries of Egypt, arguing they all trace back to a single, primal source. To her, the veiled goddess Isis was the symbol of nature itself, hidden, secret, waiting to be revealed. Philosophers and priests only glimpsed her veil. Theosophy, she declared, sought to lift it.
HPB did something I think that people don't fully appreciate. What she did was quite unique in the world of literature. She made a resume of all the old classical traditional knowledge of this subject that had ever been in the world or written up in books. And she went to the trouble of finding all the old scriptures, all the old systems of philosophy, all the old religions, and all the great sages, and she somehow or another acquired a knowledge of what they said and put it all together.
The main part of these teachings, these philosophies, was of course Eastern. India, in the late 1870s, was a vast and fascinating world of contradictions, where the ancient East met the Western influences of the British Raj. Blavatsky and Olcott travelled extensively around the subcontinent to promote interest in her great work. They eventually established in the south at Adyar, near Madras, the headquarters for the Theosophical Society.
At a time when India was simply the back hole of Calcutta or Sati or infanticide, they saw a vision of India, they saw the magic of India, they saw beyond the poverty and filth that we still hear today. They saw the thing that drew people and still draws people, from the Beatles down to any person who comes today, that magic that still exists in India. And I think this is why the society also still has a headquarters in India, that from here, I think more than anything else, she contributed to the image of India in a remarkable way, in the sense that India, not just the country or locality, but India in the sense of a state of mind.
Blavatsky was developing a reputation for producing astounding psychic phenomena. In an empty room, bells would ring, furniture move. Most importantly, letters written to her and her associates by the masters were apported.
I found it difficult to understand at first how someone who was attacked by the spiritualist of whom she so disapproved could at the same time herself receive phenomena.
You can't really discuss H.P. Blavatsky without the phenomena. She did produce phenomena. Again, she pointed to the fact that this was not her chief aim, but it did gain the attention of the world.
Well, she hoped that by demonstrating these faculties that she would inspire people with interest to explore the teachings and the ideas that she sought to propagate to humankind. She found that people, when presented with phenomenon, were simply excited by that, and they didn't seek to go any further. that's a great pity. So she really turned away from that. I think from those who were around her at the time, they had no doubt that she was very capable. But this fact alone put her in the midst of controversy that was to, in a way, work against her altruistic mission, which was to teach man about the spiritual science and about man's latent capabilities that he could draw upon. So it worked for those around her, but it became a two-edged sword. Yes, I think there's plenty of evidence that she did some amazing things that would excite the parapsychologists of today. But it didn't serve the purpose to which she hoped, which was to draw people towards the understanding and the questions, the great questions that man has always asked. What am I? What is it about human nature that can make these phenomena possible?
Isis Unveiled made Helena Blavatsky a sensation. But fame came with a price. From the moment the book appeared in 1877, critics pounced.
Good heavens, what is this nonsense?
Academics accused her of plagiarism, pointing out entire passages lifted from encyclopedias, histories, and obscure occult texts. Spiritualists denounced her for dismissing mediums as frauds or fools. And scientists ridiculed her insistence that astral forces and psychic energies were more real than atoms. The press labeled her everything from a fraud to a witch. She became a magnet for controversy, admired by her followers, attacked by everyone else. In 1879, Blavatsky and Henry Olcott sailed to India and established the Theosophical Society's headquarters in Adyar, near Madras. Here, Theosophy attracted thousands: Hindu reformers, seekers from the West, and curious officials of the Raj. For a time, she seemed unstoppable. But the backlash followed. In 1884, the Society for Psychical Research in London sent investigators to examine her alleged phenomena. Their report, published in 1885, branded her one of the most accomplished imposters in history. The scandal nearly destroyed her reputation. Her health collapsed. She fled India, first to Europe, then to London. By the late 1880s, she was in chronic pain, chain-smoking, and often bedridden. Yet even then, she refused to stop. In this storm of controversy, she began her greatest work, a book that would not just defend her vision, but expand it into a complete cosmology. In 1888, Helena Blavatsky published the work that would define her legacy, The Secret Doctrine, the synthesis of science, religion, and philosophy. Another two immense volumes running over 1,500 pages, written in London while she was in failing health. She chain-smoked as she dictated, often from her sickbed. Friends described her coughing, pale, exhausted, but still thundering with words as if they were not her own. To her followers, she was not the author, but the channel. She said the Mahatmas guided her hand, and that the text was built on the stanzas of Jayan, verses from an ancient book preserved in Tibet, written in a sacred language called Senzar. The Secret Doctrine was nothing like Isis Unveiled. Where that book attacked science and theology, this one set out to replace them. It presented a complete cosmology, a hidden history of the universe and of humanity itself. The structure was divided in two. Volume 1, Cosmogenesis, explored the origin and structure of the cosmos. Volume 2, Anthropogenesis, traced the hidden evolution of mankind. Together they formed what Blavatsky called the wisdom religion, the primordial truth behind all faiths, myths, and sciences. Cosmogenesis was Blavatsky's vision of the universe, how it came into being, how it evolves, and the laws that govern it. At its heart was the claim that the cosmos is not lifeless matter, but living spirit. The universe, she said, comes into being through endless cycles, vast rounds of birth, death, and rebirth. Hinduism calls them manvantaras and pralayas, ages of manifestation followed by ages of rest. Creation is not a single event, but a heartbeat, pulsing through eternity. She spoke of planes of existence, visible and invisible worlds, woven together in a vast hierarchy. What science saw as empty space, she called a plenum of hidden forces. Every atom of matter, she wrote, is alive with consciousness. Karma, too, was not just personal law, but cosmic law. Entire worlds rise and fall under its balance. Civilizations, planets, even stars obey the same justice that governs the soul.
The secret doctrine begins with nothingness. The universe, Blavatsky wrote, begins in a state of absolute non-being. No light, no mind, no time, just one breathless, boundless presence. She preserved an ancient stanza that reads, "Nor aught nor naught existed, yon bright sky was not." The only one breathed breathless by itself. From this invisible void emerges a seed, a germ, the root of the world, still hidden in universal stillness. Creation begins not with form, but with pure potential. The universe was still concealed in the divine thought in the divine bosom. Then the cosmic night stirs like a lotus unfolding. A single ray pierces the darkness. The eternal egg begins to hatch. Darkness radiates light, and light drops one solitary ray into the mother deep. The eternal egg condenses into the world egg. From within it, a force appears, Fohat, the fiery whirlwind, the cosmic energy that binds spirit to matter. He drives the sparks of consciousness into motion, spinning them into suns and worlds. They make of him the messenger. Fohat is the steed, and the thought is the rider. He places them in the 6 directions of space, and one in the middle, the central wheel. Planes of existence unfurl in concentric wheels, layered realities animated by divine hierarchies. And within this unfolding souls, called sparks, begin their descent. Some accept form while others refuse, creating separation, suffering, and the first cosmic rebellion. At the 4th, the sons are told to create their images. 1/3 refuses, 2 obey. The curse is pronounced. They will be born on the 4th, suffer and cause suffering. This is the first war. At last, life emerges in layers, divine, spiritual, and human. Matter, spirit, and consciousness fuse into one vast wheel of becoming. This was the hidden story of creation itself, a universe born from darkness into light, a cosmology as ancient as the stars, preserved, she claimed, in the secret stanzas of Jian.
Cosmogenesis explained how the universe itself was born, and the next step was even more ambitious. Blavatsky turned to humanity. She explained how our species did not simply crawl up from the mud by blind evolution, but emerged in stages, vast epochs of transformation guided by a cosmic law. She called these stages the root races. 7 great cycles of mankind, stretching from ghost-like beings of pure light, through giants of myth and lost civilizations, down to the humanity we know today, and beyond, into futures yet to come. In her vision, this hidden history of the root races was the true story of our origins and our destiny. The first root race, Blavatsky wrote, were astral beings, unlike anything we would call human today, beings of pure ether, projections rather than flesh, forms spun out of astral substance. They were vast, shadow presences, lacking bones, blood, or physical density. The first attempts at humanity, the outlines or prototypes cast directly from divine imagination. They reproduced not through physical union, but through a process of budding, dividing like cells or splitting like crystals. They were dreamlike, moving across the earth in silence, ethereal phantoms existing on a plane between spirit and matter. Their destiny was to dissolve, to leave behind faint echoes, paving the way for denser forms to follow. The second race, called the Hyperboreans, grew heavier and denser than the first, though they still retained an almost otherworldly subtlety. These beings lived in a mythical land of eternal spring, a place without night, hunger, or death. Blavatsky placed it in Hyperborea, a continent at the pole, long since vanished. They were not yet human as we know it, but they were closer, shimmering figures formed of light-infused matter. The Hyperboreans reproduced not through sex but through budding and exudation, a more material process than their predecessors. They were tall, radiant, luminous, and lived in harmony with the forces of nature. To Blavatsky, they represented a bridge between pure astral spirit and the dawn of physical humanity. The third root race was known as the Lemurians. These were giants, some said as tall as trees, their forms massive and powerful, straddling the line between myth and nightmare. At first, they were androgynous, embodying both male and female principles within themselves. But in this epoch, something changed. For the first time, humanity discovered sexual reproduction. With that discovery came the burdens of passion, conflict, and mortality. But it was here, Blavatsky taught, that the true drama of humanity began. The Lemurians were given mind. Into their vast frames descended higher beings, the sons of mind, who awakened self-awareness within them. It was a moment of intervention, a divine spark entering matter. To some, it was a gift of knowledge. To others, a fall from innocence. This was the first echo of the Promethean myth, of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, of the Anunnaki descending from the heavens. It was here, in Lemuria, that man became conscious of himself, and history, occult history, began. The fourth root race was Atlantis. According to Blavatsky, this was a vast civilization of immense power, advanced in both technology and psychic ability. The Atlanteans mastered forces now forgotten, harnessing energies beyond our science, communicating by thought, shaping matter with will. They built cities of splendor, and for a time, their glory surpassed all. But power brought corruption. The Atlanteans grew arrogant, intoxicated by their abilities, and turned their gifts to domination. The great flood myths of the world, from the Bible to Sumer to Plato's dialogues, echo their fall. In Blavatsky's telling, Atlantis was destroyed in cataclysm, earthquakes, fires, and floods swallowing continents. The few survivors scattered across the globe, seeding the myths of gods and giants in every culture. Their downfall marked the end of an age, but their legacy, both noble and cursed, lived on in us. The fifth root race is our present humanity. The Aryans, as Blavatsky called them, using the old linguistic sense of Indo-European peoples. For her, this race represented the age of intellect, culture, and the flowering of philosophy and science. It was a stage of development, not a final form, humanity caught between its Atlantean inheritance and its future transformation. This race, she said, is meant to refine mind and master the external world, but it remains deeply flawed. Still ruled by ego, still divided by nations, wars, and material obsessions, the fifth root race stands at a crossroads. It is the humanity we know, but not the humanity we are destined to become. Blavatsky foresaw two more races to come. The sixth would be luminous beings of intuition and telepathy, free from division, heralds of a golden age. The seventh would be perfected humanity, radiant and divine, returning to spirit as the cycle comes full circle. In her vision, mankind's story is not an accident of evolution, but a cosmic pilgrimage, from light into matter and back again. The pattern is ancient. In Sumer, the Anunnaki descend and fashion mankind from clay mixed with their own divine essence. In Genesis, the Elohim declare, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And in the book of Enoch, the Watchers descend, altering human destiny by teaching forbidden knowledge. Each tradition tells the same story, that we became human not by chance, but by intervention. Blavatsky never used the word Anunnaki, but the pattern is unmistakable. Her sons of mind, her masters, belong to the same archetype. Higher intelligences, descending, instructing, and shaping humanity. Blavatsky said she was in contact with hidden adepts, the Mahatmas, especially Morya and Kuthumi. She described them as living in Tibet, keepers of the ancient wisdom, directing her mission. To her followers, they were real men of flesh and blood. To skeptics, they were inventions. But what if they were something else? If we set aside the Victorian imagery, the masters may fit into a much older tradition of intermediaries, messengers, watchers, Anunnaki. Not gods, not men, but something in between. Guardians of forbidden knowledge, moving behind the veil of history, working through chosen emissaries like Blavatsky. The question is whether Blavatsky's Mahatmas were Himalayan mystics, or whether she had tapped into the same current of influence that cultures before her had called angels, titans, or Anunnaki. In every tradition, humanity's leap into awareness is explained not by chance, but by intervention. In Blavatsky's Theosophy, as in Enoch, as in Sumer, we find the same story. The descent of higher beings and the dawn of mankind. The only question left is who they truly were.
Man cannot perceive wisdom. He cannot understand its meaning, because the basic keys to his knowledge are still unknown to him. In 1880, this parcel of land in southern India near Madras was purchased by a Russian woman, a woman who dreamed of the day when people from different parts of the world will gather here under one roof to support each other in their search for wisdom and truth, to discover their inner power and provide a service to humanity by fighting against ignorance, to lessen the burden of suffering in the world through the dissemination of divine wisdom. This world-famous woman was an enigmatic person, even for those who thought they knew her well. For some, she was a great being who succeeded in reaching the highest levels of wisdom and illumination, a woman who explored new paths in the development of humanity. For others, she was a heretic who advocated the eradication of all religious creeds. There were those who saw her as an example of mercy and compassion. Others thought her ruthless. Some referred to her as a woman of endless patience. To others, she was known for her explosive anger. It seems that there were no emotional or personality traits lacking in the complex personality of this woman.
In April 1878, Thomas Edison quietly signed up as the 162nd member of the Theosophical Society after receiving Isis Unveiled from Olcott and Blavatsky. He even added a note, "I shall read between the lines." The encounter left a mark. Edison had already been experimenting with what he called etheric force, a subtle energy he believed might connect matter and mind. At his lab that year, he tried to move a pendulum with will alone, using metal wires and fluids as conductors from his forehead. Like Blavatsky, he believed that matter might not be inert. Perhaps every atom contained intelligence. She even cited him in Isis Unveiled, quoting him on atoms' subtle relationships. Decades later, in 1920, Edison publicly revealed he was working on a spirit phone, a device intended to communicate with the afterlife. He insisted it would be scientific, not occult. but the ambition echoed his earlier curiosity about unseen forces. Edison didn't build his spirit phone, but in a way, Blavatsky did. Through the Secret Doctrine, she mapped the cosmic codes of mind and matter. Both were haunted by the same question: could the invisible be made visible? Helena Petrovna Blavatsky died in London in 1891. To her enemies, she left behind a trail of fraud, scandal, and unanswered questions. But to her followers, she opened a doorway to wisdom older than history. Her Theosophical society endured long after her death, spreading across the world. In India, it inspired reformers who saw in her teaching a bridge between East and West. A young Mohandas Gandhi read Theosophical texts and later said they opened his eyes to the depth of Hindu tradition. In Europe, poets like W.B. Yeats, artists like Wassily Kandinsky, and philosophers like Rudolf Steiner drew on her vision. Even scientists like Albert Einstein kept the Secret Doctrine on their shelves, curious about her cosmic imagination. Was she chosen by hidden masters? Or did she invent them to give voice to her own genius? Was she a messenger of the divine, or a magician of myth? What is certain is this: Helena Petrovna Blavatsky changed the way the world dreams of its origins. She dared to lift the veil of Isis, to speak of masters behind the curtain of history, and to give us a story of humanity that stretched from the stars to the soul.
Was Helena Blavatsky a messenger of higher powers, or simply a mirror of humanity's oldest dreams? Join us next time as we peer deeper into the void of history on the Anunnaki Connection. For centuries, mankind has gazed at the stars, wondering if we are alone. Ancient texts What if the cradle of civilization was also the site of our first encounter?